Welcome to another edition of AV Rant. I'm Tom Andry, Associate Editor of Audioholics, and I'm here with
Rob H. This is AV Rant. It's your home theater and AV questions answered. And I noticed on our video, our YouTube video, that you can watch live as we record these podcasts live on air, that Tom did not make the wide eyes before the video began because I'm sure it was at the top of his mind.
It was on my mind. I was actually thinking that. I was like, don't do the thing with
He
your
was like
eyebrows.
purposely squinting to make sure he didn't have the wide eyes
Oh,
at
yes,
the
and
very
my
beginning of the
new camera that
video.
I got from Clint that made my picture so much better, it just
Mm-hmm.
decided it's done. It's
Mm-hmm.
don't really like working. And I plugged it into different computers, and with the laptop, it won't do anything. With the desktop gives me a notification that says that it has malfunctioned. I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
how do you know it's malfunctioned? It's not doing anything. But it won't do anything. I'll work on it anyway. So
Yeah,
more
there's so much
technology.
to do with a broken USB port. So,
Well, it's not the I don't know. It's not the port. It's not
eh.
the computer. It's
Mm.
the device. So the something I don't even. Anyhow, so that's another thing. My voice is kind of messed up tonight too. I'm a
Ah,
little scratchy. I'm yelling at children probably. I don't know.
that could do it.
All right. This is AV Rant, the podcast where we answer your home theater and AV questions. Get your questions answered. All you have to do is ask. You can email us at rob@avrant.com, tom@avrant.com, or question@avrant.com. You can go to www.avrant.com, create a user ID, and leave a comment there. You can go to facebook.com/avrantpodcast, or you can. I did. Or you can go to Twitter at First Reflect for Rob, at avrant_Tom for me, and at Austin Pond for our producer, Austin, who helps put
Hmm.
together our questions. Austin also has his own podcast. It's the We Watch Movies podcast. It's a podcast that discusses the New York Times crossword of the day.
Ooh,
That's what they talk about.
riveting.
It's exciting.
They
Ugh,
gather them up for an entire week and then blast through seven of them at a time.
that's right.
Double
Discuss
episode for
some
the
of the
Sunday.
all the themes that are going on
Ah,
and tips and tricks, hints. It's really if you're into that sort of thing, I think the majority of their audience is octogenarian. So there's that. All right. This week we have some listeners of the week. Our two
we
listeners of the
do.
week this week are Andrew and Michael. Andrew and Michael have gone to www.avrant.com and clicked on the buy us a cup of coffee link. Then after they did that, they were able to leave us a PayPal donation, which they did. Since then, we have gotten probably two more listeners of the week that happened
Ah,
today.
okay.
Not one was a donation, and one was somebody's going to donate some gear to help out the
Mm,
podcast. We will talk about them next week since it just
yes.
happened today, and I'm waiting for the gear to show up before I start handing out listeners of the week willy nilly.
Yes, just promises are easily made.
Speaking of gear, Emotiva is getting on my nerves at this point.
Oh,
I have the last contact I had with them was like last week, Wednesday or Thursday,
mm-hmm.
and I have responded to their email, the request to say, I said, okay, well, that didn't work, so this is what I'm seeing, and now what? And nothing. And then I sent them another one and said, listen, I got to get this review done of these speakers. You got people waiting on them. Would really like to have a nice 2-channel amp to go with it. I like it to be Emotiva because people are often asking the question, does Emotiva have amps that are good enough to drive electrostatic speakers? Here we are, electrostatic speakers, Emotiva amps. I'm putting them in a big honking room, and I'm not going to sit very close to them. So figured this would be a good opportunity for you guys to put those two things together. No, nothing. So
Yeah, dear. Well, could you swing just, left and right front speaker outputs from your Denon receiver and
oh,
just
I
power
could.
them?
I could put
Yeah.
them in here. I could put them in the home theater, but I
Yeah.
wanted to put them. I wanted to use the special gear for them, so
Mm.
it's all set up nice. It looks nice. It's like it's sitting on a marble slab on top of my carpet because I don't want the carpet fibers to get into the amplifier, which doesn't work anyways.
No, that was the older RPA amplifier,
Yeah,
which they don't make and sell anymore
I don't
anyway.
care.
So
I just said send me something that's 2 channels so I can power these
there
things.
you go.
I will
Yes.
send it back, and I really, really will. I mean, they know I will. I've done it before. It's not like I've been in this game long enough where I'm not some sort of sleazy, you know, blogger type who's just in it to try to get as much free gear as they can.
No.
I do not need your amplifier. after I'm finished with this review, that amplifier is going right back in the box. So I don't really care. I'm just not something
Well,
I'm interested in.
you should see if ATI will send you one of their new 4000 series. Get a
Oh, I
4000
might have
too.
to contact them. I
Yeah,
might have to do that just so that I can have something to
sweet.
review this thing with. So
You can listen to how quiet it is.
no, I can't. Technically, I can't.
Yes. Well, I'm going to go back to listeners of the week real quick. First of all, to say thank you to Andrew and Michael since I didn't chime in there.
Yes.
And also just to mention Ash, who did get back with the super high res versions of our logos, which I did forward on to Paul McDonald. So all of that is in motion. And we're just waiting for Paul to get a new race car so we can slap a sticker on it in nice 300 DPI.
No other podcast has a race car. I am sure of that.
Unless there's like a race car podcast. There might be.
It could be. Yeah, it could be. But, you know.
I'm sure Adam Carolla like sticks his podcast on his own race cars or something.
Something, but that doesn't even count. That dude's freaking rich.
He is.
We don't have any money.
No.
We're dealing with my terrible
We're in negative money.
We're in negative money. We're getting close to making enough to break even, and we're gonna get this Patreon thing done too. We got to work on that this week. You and I have got to come up with something that we're gonna say, and then we'll film it in a nice way, and then somebody's got to figure out which YouTube clips to use because I don't want to use. Oh man, yeah, there's a lot of.
Hey,
them.
Producer Austin, want to go back through hundreds of hours of video?
Pick a funny moment that you can remember and go find it, and do that.
Oh dear.
All right, so let's do with the news. I didn't find anything interesting in the news this week, so whatever. Rob in the news was the guest co-host on Entertainment 2.0 podcast with Josh Pollard last week, and he did a deep dive on 4K and high dynamic range, right? High
dynamic range.
My brain is not working to fix and would like to listen to a podcast other than our own. Go to Entertainment 2.0 podcast. And
it was a deep dive for sure.
348.
Mm-hmm.
48.
We'll have a link for it. Posted at avrant.com.
With Rob H. says. All right, we've Rob's also found something that I actually am not happy about, but whatever. We've had foam lightsabers and we've had glowing lightsabers, but now we have foam glowing lightsabers. And this is all thanks to a Canadian Kickstarter campaign from a LARPing company.
Calimasil.
That is a stupid name.
French Canadian.
Even worse. And they're on the way. May 2016, they're supposed to be here, which means anytime between May 2016 and never.
And the good ones, the ones you want, the ones that are bright, you can change the color of the lightsaber with an app on your phone.
They're Bluetooth.
And they have a speaker with sound effects built in so that they actually make the womp womp sounds as you clash them into each other.
$700.
500.
Whatever. Doesn't matter.
You get a 2-pack for only $9.50, and that's Canadian dollars, so that's practically free. Still more than I can afford.
Hear the eye roll on the podcast? Can you hear it? Can you hear it in the silence that was right there?
Those are the master versions. There are less expensive versions, but every version below that doesn't have the sound effects. I'm like, why would you buy a light up foam lightsaber that doesn't have the sound effects? That's
you can just buy
just a waste.
You can just buy the stick part, the empty
yeah, you can
part.
Yeah,
they are way too expensive.
But see, all the ones before
when that actually when that guy was testing it, when he was beating it on the it was clear he was not wanting to hit it too hard.
Well, no, I mean there is a solid LED tube in the middle of it, protected by foam. So, of course, it can still be broken, but these are a lot more hittable than the ones we had before that lit up, which were really cool, but they were like solid plastic. So
it really doesn't matter because for $450 to $500, whatever they are, you're not hitting crap with that. And if somebody tries to hit you with it, you are going to be uber pissed.
It could be true.
So it's pointless. It's a pointless thing. They're too expensive. They have to be much cheaper.
They are.
I'm sorry. They have to be 1/10 of that price.
But they're still cool. I'm glad they're possibly going to exist. They've already hit their Kickstarter fundraising goal by like a gazillion % early on.
I think it was $50,000 is what
they only wanted $50,000.
And they're at like 75 or something.
Yeah, within like 3 days they were at $75,000, so should not be a problem.
Just have way more money than sex apparently. Jonathan sent us a link to the new resurrected Orpheus headphones from Sennheiser. No, they're not those little glasses that you clip to your nose so that you can be the
That's
dude from
Morpheus anyway, but
whatever. Shut up. They're only gonna make 250 of these a year, and they're electrostatics, and they have their own tube preamp.
That's right.
Which is built into a piece of hand-selected marble. What other kind of, or how else do you select marble? Do you just close your eyes and just grab a piece, or you have a robot do it for you? It's so stupid. Anyways, and the tubes and the knobs on the thing rise up out of the marble when you turn it on, and they recede back down when you power it down, which makes no sense because then your hot tubes are now encased in marble.
That's where the money's going.
That's where it's going.
Because
and how much? $55,000. That's not even Canadian dollars. That's real dollars.
55,000. See, the old Orpheus models that were out decades ago were $16,000 at the time. So here you go.
They're hand built.
Yeah,
they're hand built. By
supposedly they sound good and they bloody well better for $55,000 for this.
$55,000, you can literally build yourself a home theater room.
Oh yeah, easily. Oh yeah,
professionally treated.
That is a sizable down payment on a house, if you want to.
I think
anyway,
250 is too many, but anyway, I think they can make 1 year's worth of them.
So we were just talking about those Stax headphones that are like $5,000 and going, oh, it'd be nice, but way too expensive. Well, just add another 5 in front of that, and there you go. Sennheiser.
And lastly, Carl sent us a link to Martin Logan is releasing their Motion AFX Atmos modules. That's right. You can now take. Do they make square speakers?
Well, these are meant to go on top of their Motion series speakers.
Yeah, so they have the Motion series, which are normal shaped speakers.
They use the folded ribbon in the Motion series of speakers. Folded
but not
ribbon
in this. The Atmos module has a 3/4 inch aluminum tweeter and a 5 1/4 inch plastic, high-end plastic, ballistic probably, midwoofer with a stamped steel basket. Just pull out all the stops on that.
Yeah, everything about this says cheap.
We just took one from Pioneer and dropped it into our box.
And yet $600 a pair. So $100 more expensive than pretty much everyone else because there's like Atlantic Technology and Klipsch and what's the other one? That's
$40 worth of materials in that thing.
Yeah, this seems like a bit of a cash grab. It doesn't really match in driver complement in any way to the rest of the Motion series. So yeah,
Martin Logan's with us, and they think, perhaps not going to work anyways. Why put too much engineering into it? Just whatever's on sale. So. We'll take whatever.
It's a shame.
Yeah. And Chris sends us a comment. He last week we were talking about headphones for him, in-ear monitors to go underneath his toque. Whatever the heck a toque is.
Oh, come on. Everybody knows what a toque is.
I live in Florida. Do you know if it's not a baseball cap, I don't wear it.
I could see you not often wearing a toque in Florida, but everyone still knows what a toque is.
Not ever. The only people who wear that are pretentious and idiotic. It's like the people that first time there's a cold breeze, they put on the scarf. I'm like, you're in Florida. You're still wearing shorts, and you have a scarf on. You're not ironic.
I wear shorts all year round, and I'm up here in Vancouver, Canada, so...
Yeah, well, you're weird. Anyways, he ended up buying the Shure SC215s in your monitors that we, meaning you, recommended.
Yes.
He's still trying different tips and getting used to tugging on his ear to put them in or on. But overall, they're very comfortable, sound great, and he's really happy with them. So that's good. I'm pretty sure that in-ear piece is out of business. Because I went looking for it, but you can still find their headphones, and they're super duper on sale. They used to be like $149 a pair. They're like $55 now.
Oh, wow.
I would totally buy those for $55. If you're looking for what I think is a pretty good sounding set of in-ear monitors, maybe not the most comfortable in the world, depending on your ear canal. If you have a big ear canal or whatever, then maybe you might like them. But I got used to how they feel, and the sound is good enough that I put up with that. I like the fit that much. But I really don't like in-ear monitors anyways. I've never found ones that I really, really liked ever. So, I'd be a candidate for one of those going in and getting the doctor and
audiologist, actually, get a ear mold.
That's what I need. Totally not going to do that, but that's what I need. And by need, I mean never going to do it. Bruno, he wants to buy 1, maybe 2 SVS subs, not maybe. Which models would we recommend for his almost 6,000 cubic foot room based on the layout, and where should they be placed?
Yes, yeah, we
Now,
had received a question from Bruno back before, which at the
mhm,
time was his room fully completed. I like it's in my head that the room wasn't fully completed the last time we heard from Bruno,
I don't know.
but I remember his cylindrical fireplace thingy up at the front of his room.
Oh, that's right.
Yep.
Yes. So Bruno's got a real issue here. The issue is that everything's open to everything.
Mhm.
So his living room is the main area where it has like an L-shaped couch, very large one.
Mhm.
Uh, Above the living room area is a lamp, which is dangles down. You know, not lamp,
Yep.
but a light fixture which dangles down and cannot be moved. Uh, to the front, and on the front wall to the left, all the way to the left corner, there's a door, and it actually has a door. I don't understand why, but it has a door. It looks like it should be a hallway to someplace, but it's got a door. And right next to that door is a cylindrical fireplace thing, just waiting to cook a speaker. To the rear left of the home theater living room area is the dining room, which leads into the kitchen, which is
Yep.
would be on the front left of the room. So the rear left would be the dining room. The front left is the kitchen, but the kitchen is closed off except there's an opening the far side over in the dining room area. That sort of helps. There's windows all over the place. The whole right wall is windows.
Mhm.
I don't know if there's windows in the back of the room or not, though. I could probably click these links and figure that out.
So I am just looking at the cylindrical fireplace, and I'm going, "Well, you've already
What?
got one cylinder in your room."
Well, I'm thinking the same thing, and not only that,
Yeah.
I really wish that that wasn't there because that's exactly where I would put a subwoofer. That
Yeah.
is literally the exact spot. I would put one there and
Yep.
one right across the room from it. That is
Straight
the perfect,
across from it. Yeah. Yeah. They would both end up to the left of the seating,
and that would
but
be
they would
perfect.
more or less be centered with the entire open space of the room that way. And you'd be getting rid of that standing wave that's going between your front and back wall in the living room. So,
And
yeah.
now that I'm looking at these pictures, between the kitchen and the living room, there is a wall, but
Mm-hmm.
between the kitchen and the dining room, there's just a counter. So
Yeah.
there's nothing hanging there. So it's all open,
It's open.
and there's windows over there. It looks like a sliding glass door, maybe a French
Yeah,
doors or
so if
something.
it weren't for the like half wall partition between the living room and the kitchen, this would
This would be
all be one
all be
gigantic open
yeah,
space.
yeah, exactly. Uh, which is kind of stinky for you because you don't really have good options for your subwoofer replacement that
Yeah,
I can
I mean
see.
front and back, both to the left of the seating, because he does have at the back of his room. He's got some what are they like bookcases or what's going on at the back there?
I don't know.
It's some kind of cupboard or something like that. But he's got what he's marked out as a 50 centimeter gap, which is about what 19 inches. So
You see where
again,
that lamp is right there? That's that light fixture that's on the ground. Put it
light
there.
fixture on the ground, yes,
Put it where that light fixture is, and that's sort of
or
exactly across from where the
yeah.
uh, fireplace thingy is.
Basically, he's got spaces where cylinders will fit.
Yes.
And I don't think cylinders will look out of place in his room because he has cylindrical lamps and a cylindrical fireplace. So
Yes.
cylinder subs make total sense. And in this size of room where you're close to 6,000 cubic feet, if you're looking to hit reference volumes, which not everybody is, of course, but if you are, then I would say you kind of need to go beyond what the PC 2000s can do. The PC 2000s are definitely good up to a larger than large room, to be honest. They're good up to
Yeah.
maybe like 5,000 cubic feet, but you're beyond that. So I'd be looking at the PC 12 pluses, the cylinder 12 pluses. The ultras would not be out of the question here, but of course the price goes up to do that. So
Yeah.
I'd be looking at least the pluses in this room. However, if you went with the PC 2000s, you might not be able to hit full reference volume, but like all SVS subs, they will not kill themselves even if you turn the volume all the way up.
You do have to
So
realize that if
it's
you
an
hit
option.
full reference volume with the amount of glass and stemware
Yeah,
that's early in this house, you're going to
yeah.
spend some time. You know,
I'd be most comfortable going for the pluses in this room, though.
yeah,
That's just me.
yeah.
There you go.
But if he gets two, where is he going to put them? That's the real question because he has to get two.
Yeah, front and back.
Well, but the front one's going to be right next to that fireplace
Yeah.
thingy.
Well, just don't turn on the fireplace.
Ever,
You're gonna melt some velour.
ever, you can never turn on
Yeah.
this fireplace.
Uh, it is a sticky wicket.
It is, and you see, there's a heating thing on that wall there too. You see that thing that's a radiator. That's
Yeah.
what it looks like to me on the wall that goes between the kitchen and the
Mm.
dining room there. So you can't put it there. You can't put it behind the door. Oh
Mm.
wait, I'm not gonna say get rid of the door because then you still couldn't put it there anyways because it block half the door anyways. So yeah,
Well, I mean, he
keep it
already
far enough
has.
from you'd have to cheat it right next to the home theater thingy that you've
Yeah.
got there.
Yeah. On the left side of the TV, because that's where he's got his current sub anyway, and that current sub is tiny.
Is that what that thing is down there? I
Yeah,
thought
that's
that
what
was like
that little
over.
that little oval shaped thing down there is his current subwoofer. So
Yeah, and if you could cheat
yes.
the sub in the back of the room closer to the windows there,
Mm-hmm.
that might offset it enough so that it's sort of opposite and opposed,
Yeah.
mirrored image of each other. All right.
Yeah. So
So that's your
front of the
subs.
room, back of the room.
Subs sorted. Uh, he previously wanted to add a projector but couldn't due to the hanging lamp,
Mm-hmm.
which is why I mentioned that. And that cannot be moved. I'm sure it can be moved. It's just there's some
Highly inconvenient.
force of nature that is stopping you from moving it. So now he's looking at the BenQ W1080ST, which the ST stands for short throw,
Mm-hmm.
which would fit in front of the lamp. So what do you think? We think of this projector? Are there other current short throw projectors we would recommend over it?
So there is an update to this one, which is
Yeah,
still BenQ. It's essentially identical, but it's now called the HT1085 ST. So in case you can't find the W1080 ST anymore, that's why it's been replaced. Although
right.
the new one is basically identical and costs exactly the same. So no big differences. Being short throw, this particular BenQ, if you have the lens of this projector 6 feet away from the screen, so that's pretty darn close for a projector, 6 feet away, it will throw from that distance anywhere between a 100-inch diagonal and 120-inch diagonal. It only has a 1.2 times zoom. But that's pretty good, 100 to 120 inches from only 6 feet away, which it looks like he definitely has room for that
Yeah.
because it looks like he has about 72 inches at least to where the front of his coffee table is. So there should be room in front of that lamp. That should work. And as far as alternatives go, there isn't a heck of a lot. I mean, there's like the $50,000 Sony. I know you're not looking at that.
Could be
LG,
looking at
I
it.
I highly doubted if the BenQ 1080 was on the radar. So LG does have an LED lit short throw 1080p projector. It's dimmer than this BenQ, so and it's costs
I
slightly
gotta, I
more.
gotta think that he's gonna want to. Is this? Did he say that this was only gonna be for nighttime viewing? Because everything
Mm,
in that house is white.
it is, yeah,
It is just white, white, white everywhere. The floors are wood, and the lamp looks like it's sort of wood too. It's that color.
yeah.
There's a little bit of beige here and there, but between wood colors and white is pretty much 99% of the colors in this room.
Yeah, I mean, to answer the first question, I think quite highly of this BenQ. It is an entry level projector, as its under $1,000 selling price would, have you believe. It is basically the short throw version of the W1070 or the HT1075, which we've recommended frequently because it's a really good value. For an entry level DLP projector, it looks very good. The black levels are, of course, not as black as the $2,500 and up ultra black models, but in a room like yours where you got a bunch of white walls anyway, you're even in darkness, you're still going to have enough light reflected back onto the screen that's going to destroy like a JVC's black levels. There'd be no point in getting a projector like that. So honestly, I don't think this is a bad choice at all. It fits in the room. It's a good looking projector, and you can get anywhere between 100 and 120 inches, which should be large enough for what he's looking to do. So I say go for it. I think it's a
The
good
only thing
choice.
I was thinking is, he's got sort of this low slung little coffee table thingy there,
Mm-hmm.
and they do make furniture. Now that this would be an expensive
Oh, one of
solution.
those rise up.
Yeah, where the projector rises up out of there. Now you don't have to go that route. You could just literally take the projector and sit it on your on
Put it
your
on the
coffee
coffee
table,
table. Yeah.
and then when you're done with it, put it, let it cool down, and then put it in or under or near the coffee table.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, really, you could do that. It's not that hard to just put it up there and then just move it. It's already calibrated. It's already got its whatever. And you maybe, I mean, if you're really going to be neurotic about it, you could put little pieces of tape or mark it. Let's put some like really subtle marks on your table so you know exactly where to put the feet, or you just set it down and kind of what I would do is I would set it down in like in such a way that I always did it the same way each time, meaning that I would back the projector up to the back of the table, or I would, the front of the table or something like that. And then just sort of adjust it subtly, what you need to do every time, and then have because I imagine he's going to have a drop down screen. It's only going to be for night.
Yeah.
Drop
But
down
one of the issues there is where his coffee table is right now. The lens of the projector would probably only be about 8 feet away from the screen. And you're in this sort of nether region where you either have a fairly small screen because you're using a regular throw projector, or way too big a screen because you're using a short throw projector.
So the center of that lamp, which looks like the center of the coffee table, is 255 centimeters from the wall, which is
a little over 8 feet.
Yeah.
So
you can scooch that back a little bit too. You can scoot the coffee table back a little bit and scoot the projector back a little bit, and you're adding 2 feet onto that.
Yeah, but most projectors, you need like a 10-foot throw for the same 100 to 120 inch size. So
just saying, it's not.
Yeah, 8 feet is almost a no man's land as far as throw ranges go.
Just saying. All right, who's next? Are we still talking about him? Despite living in Belgium, he still doesn't know my Sophie. Somebody's got to find Sophie. I know she's alive. I've seen pictures of her baby on Facebook all the time. So someone in Belgium needs to find Sophie. That she lived in Perth and she took care of my son Soren for a while. And Kellen, and I think Kellen was really mean to her, which I would make.
Yeah, these days with Facebook, somebody probably will find her.
I know. All right, Kevin has an 18-inch ported subwoofer in all 4 corners. These DIY or just regular? No, it doesn't matter. All 4 corners of his 26 by 18 by 8 foot dedicated home theater.
Nice.
These are triangle-shaped floor. There are triangle-shaped floor-to-ceiling bass traps in the 2 front corners, which the drivers of the front subs are pointed towards.
So he's got them.
Yeah,
I got the face of them aiming into the corners. Yeah.
That's weird. Bass is even in the room except for the 1-foot strip in the dead center of the room from front to back. So he's got the drivers pointed towards the corners to prevent the kids from damaging them, but is this bad? Well, why? What are your children doing in your home theater that is going to damage these things? This whole thing threw me. I'm like, most of the time, these things are made out of like Kevlar or like reinforced,
or aluminum,
or reinforced, like pulp, paper stuff that's really actually quite firm. Aluminum, stuff like that. What do you think they're going to do to these things? And what's wrong with your children that they wouldn't even think of that and not think that they're going to end up buried in the backyard if they do? Because I guarantee you, my kids know that's what's going to happen.
Regardless of that, though, it doesn't matter if you face the driver into the wall. That's fine. The bass becomes omnidirectional.
It's omnidirectional anyway. So
I mean, there are down firing subs where they've only got a couple inches between the driver and the floor. And those work perfectly fine. So as long as it's not like actually bumping into the wall, it's so close when it fires. Totally fine to have the driver facing into the wall.
So he asked, would adding traps near the rear fix the unevenness? I don't understand how he knows it's a 1-foot strip and it's dead center in the room.
He can probably hear it.
Well, I know, but that's awfully specific.
It is, which means you have a very prominent room mode happening there, which actually isn't terribly shocking. There is an online room mode calculator that can show you sort of a 3D rendering of where you are expected to have room modes, and right at about 62 hertz, just slightly above 62 hertz, he is expected to have a very strong front to back, running straight down the middle of his room, horrible actually peak is what it was showing, but if you've turned your subs around, maybe you're getting a null there. It should be a peak in the middle there. Maybe that's what he means by uneven. Maybe it's tremendously louder.
Did not say it was.
Yeah, he just said uneven. So this is not hugely unexpected, and noticing the pictures that he sent, what he's done, he says he's got 2 subwoofer outputs.
Do I have pictures?
Oh, they're down there. They're in the pics. So he's got 2 subwoofer outputs. I can't tell if they're totally independent, but the language makes me think that they are independent, the 2 subwoofer outputs. The 2 that he has in the front corners of his room, he has set as subwoofer 1 together, since they are equidistant from the main listening position. And then the 2 subs that are in the back of the room, he has set as subwoofer 2. I wonder if they have
stereo.
Yeah, if they're in stereo or if they're in different delays, different distances. Because actually, if you run like sub EQ HT, it will do that. It will set different distances for the two subs. I would try manually adjusting them so that they all have an identical delay. And whatever the longer delay is, that's the one you set it to. So if you have a longer delay or a greater distance is the way it would show up in your manual settings. If the manual distance for subwoofer 1 is longer than for subwoofer 2, I would try manually setting subwoofer 2 to be the same distance and see if that helps. If it doesn't, then it's actually time to start playing with phase, because you can move that mode out of the middle of the room by starting to adjust the phase of having 4 separate subwoofers. So the bass traps in the corners, not gonna help you here, because first of all, they'd have to be what, 4'8", 5 feet thick to start affecting 62 hertz. So they'd have to be crazy
going on here is that with the amplifier, each amplifier channel powering 2 subs, he's not able to independently control the volume of each one of those subs in his room. So that's going to be an issue as well.
It should be okay, because
it should, because they should be
pairs are equidistant
from his seat.
Yeah,
in theory.
Yeah,
but still, that's another thing to consider. This is the first time I've seen these pictures. I don't know why I couldn't find them before.
Yeah, the bass traps are there to reduce decay times. That's what the bass traps are there to do. But they're not going to eliminate standing waves. Standing waves will still exist with bass traps there, especially the lower you go in frequency, the less the bass traps are going to have any effect whatsoever. So the solution for having a big room mode like you're finding is adjusting the phase. It should actually work if all of them are in phase with each other, acting as one mono sub. That actually should be the solution here. So yeah, that's my suggestion.
He also asked if you should add a barrier in front of the sub. I see why now he's worried about the kids and the driver, because it's a side firing. It's a front port, side firing woofer, and the surround is very, very large. You know, the rubber surround is very large.
That's an 18-inch diameter.
And it protrudes, so it'd be easy to poke and stab with things. I can't quite figure out where are his speakers on those in the corners, basically. Is that the speaker there?
I'm not sure if those are or if those are front wides.
But where would his other speakers be? I don't see any other
red things. The red things
aren't speakers, are they?
They might be.
You think they might be like those Martin Logan thingies?
Yeah, those could be specialty grills, because he's got a horizontal one right below his flat panel TV. I'm assuming that's a center speaker.
Yeah, it could be. Maybe those are wides.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. Acting as front wides.
I mean, he's got 7.1 in this itty bitty room too. I don't know how big this room is. Anyway,
in any case,
yes,
you don't need to. Yeah, you don't need to put like a piece of plywood over the bass trap in the corner where the driver is firing into. Again, it's making very little difference in the lowest frequencies. In the higher frequencies, like getting above 80 hertz up towards 200 hertz, that's where the bass trap is potentially making some difference there. But below that 80 hertz crossover, the bass trap is barely touching that subwoofer anyway. So
it's doing something. It's just not
very
doing a lot.
little. Yeah. Putting that panel there would have more effect on higher frequencies than on lower ones.
It looks like he's got plenty of absorption in that room too.
Oh yeah.
All right. Lastly, is there a standard ratio of how much of a sub's output is from the port versus the driver?
No, it
not really.
it's more and more the lower the frequency gets.
So you're supposed to, when you measure subwoofers, you're supposed to measure from 2 feet from the driver, and then you're supposed to measure, or whatever it is, 2 meters from the driver, and then measure from the port as well, and then you use a algorithm to add them.
Because the way the port works is that it acts as a resonator. So as the frequency gets lower and you get closer to the tuning frequency of that port, it resonates more and more. And then on either side of the resonant frequency of that port, the port gets quieter and quieter. So the ratio of how much sound is coming from the port versus directly from the driver changes depending on frequency and the tuning frequency of the port. So no standard. Yeah.
I'm deleting. I'm trying to close Windows so that I can have more room to. I can't see anything. I have too many windows. My wife's been using my laptop, and it's like she has a aversion to closing tabs. So I've
Oh,
got all these tabs open and they're not mine. I'm trying to get rid of them. Anyways, all right. Brett is shopping for 7 speakers. He came across the Infinity reference series that can compete in the same sort of price range as the SVS Prime and ELAC debuts. There aren't any professional reviews right now,
there's like
but
one.
any that he could find are very positive. The ones on their website are extremely positive. I found some on there. I was like,
Surprise.
wow, it's almost like you work here. And some recent sales at Crutchfield have moved their price point below the competition at the moment.
Mm-hmm.
Do we have any thoughts? Red flag? Should you buy them? He wants wide, even dispersion and something that will sound clearly better than his old home theater in a box and sound bar, which he finds he has to crank up just to understand dialogue, and then it sounds harsh. Brett, if the yardstick by which you are measuring your new speakers are home theater in the box and soundbar speakers, be prepared to have your mind blown.
Yeah.
No matter what you buy.
Yeah.
if we so much as think that it might be okay, you're gonna be like, oh my god, these are the best things ever.
I'm not worried about that.
Yeah.
That I am not worried about at all.
Yes, you are going to love your new speakers. So let's just be happy with that. Let's just know that for a fact right now. Now, should you buy these Infinities? Well, I can guarantee you, Rob and I have never heard these before. Aren't they brand new?
I have not heard them.
Yeah. Infinity speakers, for the most part, I have been I generally have a positive impression of them.
Mm-hmm.
The one higher end Infinity speaker I reviewed, it's part of my floor $1,500 to $2,000 floor standing speaker shootout, I think fared fairly poorly. Now, that being said, generally speaking, you would not spend $1,500 to $2,000 for that speaker because, like these, they go on sale, and you wait for that to happen and you buy that. So these, if you can get these speakers on sale, I'm betting they're going to give you a pretty good sound. I mean, I'm seeing the designs here. I'm seeing are pretty decent. They have a reference, they call a reference RC 263 center channel, which has the tweeter above the mid range and the two flanking woofers. Now they have the other one, which doesn't. It's just smaller. They have towers, which honestly I don't think I would buy an Infinity Tower, just generally speaking. I mean, I don't think there's anything wrong with it, but I think what happens with I've seen this with Polk speakers, I've seen this with Infinity somewhat, but they tend to be concerned that you're gonna like the bass. They expect you to want there to be a lot of bass. Therefore, they tend to bloat the bass in these speakers. Now, you're probably going to roll it up. You're going to cross it over 80 hertz anyways. That'll fix a lot of those problems. But I think if you're going to do that, I would just go. I mean, I don't know the size of this guy's room. I forgot to. Did we say? He didn't say. But he's looking at the ELAC speakers. He's looking at the SVS Primes. So chances are you'll be okay with the bookshelf speakers. They have quite a few. They have 2 different pairs here. It looks like 162s. The 152s or 162s are probably 6.5. Yeah, 6.5 inch. So there'll be a little bit better bass there. I had some Infinity bookshelf speakers for years that my wife got on recommendation from a friend, and they really were great speakers for their price point, especially since I got them out of the marriage, so they were free to me.
Infinity is part of Harman. Harman certainly is a name I trust as far as the research that they do goes.
If only they would put more of it into their speakers, it would make me
that
happy.
Would be nice. Yeah.
I mean, they do, but only what the JBL synthesis stuff gets it, and everybody else is like, whatever, just use plastic.
But I do have to say, before those Andrew Jones Pioneer speakers came out, and sort of moved the goalposts in the really inexpensive speaker market, the Infinity Primus line, which is below this new reference line, they were my go-to recommendation for sure, and they remain good sounding speakers. They had one little quirk about those Primus speakers, which is particularly in the towers, they actually dipped quite low in impedance, and since they were a low-cost speaker, chances are they're going to be connected to a lower cost amplifier or receiver. So dipping low in impedance, not necessarily a great thing. And from the one professional review, which did have measurements attached to it, these towers, again, in the reference line, they do dip down just below 4 ohms at a couple of frequencies. So it seems like that similar crossover design is still part of this Harman design. However, they didn't dip like staggeringly low in any way. If you had something that fit the old THX Select 2 certification, it would have no problem driving them as far as
Well,
impedance
4 ohms.
goes.
If you're buying a midline receiver, you're not gonna have any problems with that.
Oh yeah, and it's only at a couple of frequencies, so
Yeah.
it's the majority of the time it's up closer to 6 or 8 ohms. So I don't see any red flags here. They actually are borrowing a little bit of the design language from the Revel Performa 3 line. Revel is another Harman company. It's using a similar design to those but with cheaper materials so they can get it to a lower price point. So there seems to be some design language being shared between Harman companies. Those new Performa 3s from Revels are very good sounding speakers. So yeah, I'm not seeing anything here that would make me say, oh, stay away from them at all. And if the price is actually lower than the competing ones you're looking at, I would feel okay at certainly giving them on audition. Buy them
Yeah.
from a place you could return them if you hate them, but I don't think you will.
Yeah, I doubt you'll
I
hate them.
guess. Yeah.
They're kind of ugly. I guess
Yeah,
that's
well,
what I think.
they're black rectangles.
I
What
don't like
isn't?
the weird line that goes across the tweeter.
The tweeter? It's part of
Yeah,
the
so these are
waveguide
the
structure.
reference,
So
the new reference ones from.
reference, infinity reference. That's right.
Yeah, and I'm sure they're fine. I mean, it doesn't really matter.
Compared to your home
I
theater in a box,
honestly
they'll
think
blow
that
you
most
away.
of
I'm sure of it.
Infinity speakers are pretty ugly. That's just, it's not just these. But if you like them, it doesn't make any difference to me. And you will be able to hear dialogue better. And once you get everything set up the way we tell you to, everything's gonna be better. Do not buy their subwoofer though.
No.
I don't think that needs to be said, but let's say it just in case you think you should match them all. You buy the 7 speakers, but the subwoofers come from other places. All right.
Yeah, and get the center that has the tweeter above the mid range.
Yes,
Even if it seems big, get that one.
Get that one. Always if you're gonna get a bigger speaker than you think you need, it's the center channel.
Yeah.
Unless it's the sub, in which case, yeah, you need that. Barney just wanted us to discuss the notion of demonstration quality tracks and how any descriptions in reviews of such tracks almost always seem to go hand in hand with playing them at full reference volume. If it's a great demonstration quality track, shouldn't it also sound great at low volume? Barney appreciates being able to hear all the detail when things are quiet, so why don't reviewers focus on this aspect of playback? I'll be honest with you, don't think I've ever consciously made the decision to listen to something at full reference volume for the purposes of a review. I turn it up until I can clearly hear everything, until I'm not straining to hear it because it's too soft, whatever that is. Usually with music, it's anywhere from, well, heck, it's been a while. In here with music, depending on the type, if it's a Blu-ray, I might go all the way up to -5, which would be just a little bit off of reference, but I might be as far down as -30. Depending on the source. So, Barney, I don't know that if they're telling you it, I've never read anybody say that they listen to it at full reference volume, but I'm sure that somebody has said that, but I don't do that. I never did that. I don't know why I would, to be honest with you. That's really loud. Reference volume is retardedly loud.
It's a little tricky because he's talking about like demo material, basically, right?
Yeah.
So he's not talking about speaker performance or amplifier performance or any of that. He's talking about the actual things that a reviewer is listening to make a determination of how these speakers or amplifiers sound. So
the amplifiers don't sound like anything, by the way. Keep going.
So
that's the review.
Yes, that's right. Yeah. The tricky thing there is our hearing is not linear. So if you're going to quiet, right, you're playing things that are very quiet and you're listening to hear if you can pick out details. What are you actually testing, right? Because if something stands out at low volume, then if you played it back at reference volume, it might be blaringly, screechingly loud. Or the reason it stands out is because it's actually a very bass-heavy track with only a tiny bit of treble. So when you turn it down and all the bass becomes inaudible because it falls below the threshold of human hearing, all of a sudden that tiny bit of treble really stands out. But you're not actually hearing what's on the track. So determining whether something is a good demo track because you can hear a lot of detail in it when you play it quietly, right? It's I'm having trouble like putting all that together in my head of what is it you're actually looking for, right? Because it's one thing to say I can still pick out details and hear dialogue clearly with these speakers even when I play them very quietly, but to actually say this is a good demonstration track that allows me to do that, it's like, what are you looking for? It allows you to do that even with crappy speakers? That makes it a good demo track? Or only really good speakers allow you to hear the detail when it's really quiet? Is that, like, I'm confused.
Yeah. I first of all, yeah, I don't think anybody does this I don't know that anybody that I know that's ever turned voluntarily during a review turned stuff down so I can still hear the quality in this because these speakers are so good. That's just not. I don't know that that's the
Oh,
way.
I've seen that
Have
because
you
I've seen
really?
people concerned with low volume playback, right?
Oh,
So
so if you have Audyssey, that's dynamic EQs on, and that's what's supposed to fix
well,
that,
yeah, but
right?
sometimes people don't want to use dynamic EQ because it keeps the bass audible. If the whole point of turning it down was to not bother someone at night, keeping the bass audible is kind of not necessarily the
I don't
goal
know.
anymore.
Good demonstration material for me serves a purpose. So
Right.
that purpose might be this has a lot of panning in it. It's horribly screechy to listen to, and I
Mm-hmm.
hate it, but it's got a lot of pans in it, and I can listen to 15 seconds of it, and I can know how well these speakers image. Or I could, you know, listen to a track of Diana Krall sing and say, "Oh, she's right there in the room with me. She's right there. I could practically feel her breath on my cheek." Shut up. No, you can't. The thing's pan well. Good imaging. Yay. Uh, got a lot of bass in it, so you can for the bass
Mm-hmm.
stuff. It's got like I've got one track that's just got a
Yep. Bass sweep.
nice little bass sweep in music. I'm
Mm-hmm.
like there because you can't just tell people in the review that you're like, I'll listen to a bunch of bass sweeps. It's got good bass. You're like, no one listens to bass sweeps. You gotta listen to music. Like, okay, now listen to music with a bass sweep. And then you can listen to stuff with high end stuff, lots of cymbals and crashes, female vocals, male
Mm-hmm.
vocals, different types of instruments. I
Yeah.
know Rob's got a specific track that he listens to because it has a oboe in it, and he knows what
Bassoon.
that sounds like. Bassoon,
Yeah.
whatever, same thing. It's not the same thing, but it doesn't matter. I don't care.
They're
Something,
related. They're double reed instruments.
and he can hear the difference between when it's played, when it's reproduced correctly and not. I can't because I'm not that familiar with the instrument about how the instrument works. But I can tell you right now that there is not a single bass guitar riff that I can listen to and not know whether or not that sounds realistic because I
Mhm.
played bass guitar for years and years and years and years. I know exactly what that sounds like, and I don't have to be, I don't have to listen to more than 5 seconds of something before I go, yeah, that sounds not right. You know,
Yeah, so I guess what he's saying is, I mean, there are the recordings we would say this isn't what I would call a demonstration quality track because it has no dynamic range. Everything is within the same range of frequencies. Nothing is particularly layered or delineated or stands out. Like it's a really flat, lifeless, boring, unuseful recording. And I would say, okay, that's not a demonstration
everything
quality track.
Oasis has ever done. There you go. You
So,
might like listening to it. You might like listening to it, and you might be really familiar with it.
mhm.
But there's nothing in there that helps you verify that speaker can do stuff well because it sounds the exact same
Yeah.
inside as it does in your car, as it does in your earbuds. It sounds the same.
Yeah. So to me, the thing is, if something is useful at full reference volume, it's still useful at low volume
Yeah.
because you're listening for the same things other than really deep bass, which might just fall below the threshold of audibility, in which point you're saying, well, that's really not the recording's fault. But all the other things, I think, regardless of volume, if you're listening for specific things within that recording, then it will serve as a demonstration track for you, regardless of the volume at which you're listening. So
I've had people
that's
bring in.
yeah.
I know I've told the story ZZ Top or something like that as a because they were like, "Let me test these speakers," and we put it in the truck. I'm like, "Are we listening to ZZ Top right now?" They're like, "Yeah." I'm like, what do you think you're going to hear? What are you listening for here?
If that's
Guitar?
what they listen to all day, every day, though, then they're
Then
familiar
it's
with it.
yeah,
So.
but clear. Anyways, Jerry got the newest Apple TV. He wants to know what the HDMI video output settings should be. He got it connected to a new Vizio E Series 70-inch TV, and the Apple TV output options are Auto, YCC, RBH High, and RBH Low,
GB, RGB,
RGH,
GB,
RGB.
red, green, blue.
I need to make myself a drink. I'm not going to make it
Yup.
through the podcast. I need water. I need some tea for my throat, and I need scotch. That's just for me.
So to be honest, here the auto setting should be fine.
That's what I would do.
Yeah, in lieu of the auto setting, YCC is what you should be using because you're connecting it to a consumer television and not to a computer monitor
Yeah.
in this case. The RGB high and RGB low Typically, what those are meaning is the RGB high is sending the entire range from 0 to 255, which is what a computer monitor is expecting to receive. The RGB low is limiting it to, they're taking the 0 to 16 figures, that becomes below black, and the 235 up to 255 are called above white, and that mimics what a consumer electronics display is expecting. It's expecting it to get a signal that has below black and above white information. That's RGB low, but it's still RGB. So most consumer displays, they're looking for a YCC signal. That's what you should go to if auto doesn't work, but auto should work. So that's where I'd leave it.
So he copied his picture settings for his video from a website.
Uh-huh.
I just want to say, don't do that.
Yeah.
Generally speaking, don't do that. In fact, not generally, specifically speaking, don't do that, because that TV is not your TV, and you don't know who those people are. And if you ever heard us, ever on this podcast, ever give somebody the advice that they should use our TV settings,
Right.
it's just, this doesn't work that way.
And
Now, we give
even
you
though it might
general-
be, yeah, even though it might be the same series from size to size, they might be sourcing the panels from different OEM manufacturers. So you can't even just go, I took the settings from a 55-inch set in the same series. Shouldn't they work? Not necessarily.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So anyways, he took the set, he set it up, but now he's able to see some slightly darker vertical bars that run down the sides of his TV if he puts up a full white or gray screen. Is this just an issue with the TV itself, or there's some error in the settings?
I don't know.
We can't know for sure.
However,
my guess is that you've got the brightness and the contrast and everything all screwy, and you need to fix it.
Well, there's a couple of things. So first of all, if he just straight up copied the settings from this website, which I'm assuming is what he meant, they have the contrast set high, a little bit abnormally high for the contrast setting. That's your white level settings. They've got that cranked right up, which could explain having some unevenness when you show a full white screen. So that's one potential cause. Another one is, for some reason, they've turned off the active LEDs, which is like the whole point.
Green Earth would you do that?
Well, because it measures more stable gamma if you're measuring it. But that's the whole point of getting a Vizio.
Our listeners are banned from ever going here again. Rtings, RTINGS, Rtings. Whatever this is, never go there again. Clearly, they don't know what they're doing.
Yeah, I was really ticked off. This is going way back, but they did that Value Electronics flat panel shootout, and they crippled the Panasonic in that shootout because they're we couldn't get accurate gamma without turning off the dynamic LEDs. I'm like, but nobody is ever going to watch it like that. And everyone's comment was, oh, the black levels aren't as deep as I expected. Of course they're not. You turned off the local
dimming. Off the lights that turn off.
So,
you made the lights stay on the whole time. You're like, I can't believe how not dark in this room it is. The lights are on. I know, but we can't turn those off because it messes up our gamma. The lights are on. It's never going to get... Shut up.
So now,
I've never done this before, but I'm banning us all from ever going there again.
Yes, definitely turn on your active LEDs, because that's why you bought this TV instead of an edge-lit one. And then the gamma they have set to 2.2, which it depends on your lighting. If you have a very dark room, you might want to set that to 2.4. If you have a moderately to brightly lit room, then 2.2 is probably fine. But all of those are potential reasons why you might have a uniformity issue. But the real one is those active LEDs, because I'm guessing that's the reason for him seeing what he's seeing, because it's just trying to light all the LEDs all the time when you turn off the active LEDs. And on a 70-inch panel, maybe the ones on the edges are receiving a little bit less power, or because the contrast is set too high and it's just uneven anyway. So those are all the things I'd look at. Don't use these settings. If you want to try copying some settings, even after all we just said, you could try the ones from CNET, the ones that they get for the 65-inch panel, because you want try the larger ones anyway. So CNET does have ones we can have a link to that.
Noise reduction set to high too. I never do that.
Yeah.
I never do that.
So It's funny because David Katzenmeier over at CNET, he does very good calibrations. I trust him. I trust his reviews probably more than anyone else's TV reviews. He purposely like hides the settings because he goes, I include them because so many people ask me to include them, but he like hides them behind a link that you can't even get on the mobile version. And like he's like, don't use these because of all the things we just said. It's like it's specific to his setup. But if you want to copy anybody's, copy his. So yeah, that's what I have to say about that.
We'll include those in the links.
Yes.
Don't ever go to Artings again. Nobody, Jerry. This you did nothing wrong. You thought
No.
you went to a website very nicely designed, good pictures, had language that made it sound like they knew what they were talking about. Clearly, clearly they do not. Diego, once again over the air.
I'll just say get a setup disk. Use
yeah.
that. Get a setup disk and use that to set your basic because you're not going to be adjusting the individual color points in the white balance menu anyway because you have not bought them. You need a meter.
Still have anything with THX? Doesn't still have?
Not on Blu-ray. They didn't include that on Blu-ray.
You can still do a DVD. Use a DVD.
Yeah, DVD. Although that doesn't necessarily get you proper 709
whatever
color.
Close enough.
So, but yeah, the setup disk.
You get blackness, you get dark brightness and contrast down.
Exactly.
90%.
Those are the main ones.
Anyways, so
yeah.
Diego, once again, over the air tuner for indoor antenna an indoor antenna to be connected to his projector. That was my 2.5 years of me complaining about that, and I got one. And guess how many times I've used it?
You got used to not using it. So.
And now I could even watch football games on it, and I don't. I probably will do like Super Bowls and stuff like that, but I would use it more if I was trying to get caught up on The Walking Dead because I watched through season 5 on Netflix, and my parents have all season 6. They've been recording it. I'm like halfway through episode 2, and I was trying to like power through. So I gotta go to my parents' house and watch it. This is on the DVR. It's thing. Anyways, he wants to get an over-the-air tuner and an indoor antenna to be connected to his projector. The TiVo Romeo over-the-air seems to get the best reviews, but is it really worth the $15 a month subscription fee? Is there a better, less expensive alternative? There's lots of alternatives out there. I looked into the Channel Master for a while, which I guess technically works. A lot of people complained about the remote and the guide. The guide being crappy.
Yeah, the guide is free and you get what you pay for.
Yeah, the guide on the Xbox One, like I'm using the Xbox One. I know he doesn't have an Xbox One. Right. I think I saw the stuff, but the easy solution to this is to get the the one for the Xbox One.
Yeah, there's the add-on tuner, which they're Hop-Hog?
The Hop-Hog.
Yes, Hop-Hog.
The Hop-Hog.
You can get the officially branded one that just says Xbox on it now, so it's still the same thing that's made by Hop-Hog, but you can get the officially branded one.
Same thing, cheaper than the other one that they sell.
When the dashboard update arrives very shortly, what is that supposed to be? November 12th? That new Xbox One dashboard? That's when DVR functionality is supposedly also going to get added. You have to add an external hard drive to your Xbox One to make the DVR work, and that external hard drive can only be used for the DVR if you add it for that purpose. You can't use it to store extra games because it formats it to only store TV. But that is a solution, but that's only a single tuner. So keep that in mind too. It's one tuner. So the TiVo Romeo OTA is $50 by itself, but then there's a 15. Huh?
How much was it?
50.
That's it?
It's cheap. Go on. But then there's a $15 a month subscription. They were running a promotion where you could buy it for $300 with a lifetime TiVo subscription, which is actually not that bad a deal if you're going to keep it for longer than 18 months. Right now, TiVo themselves are not running that promo. Amazon is out of stock with that particular promo. They do have it listed from other vendors, but they've bumped up the price because they know they can. So now it's like $400 for that deal. So it has associated costs, but the Romeo gives you 4 tuners, which no other OTA tuner does that I'm aware of that you can buy at that type of price. It gives you the TiVo service, which is pretty darn solid. That's really what you're paying for. It gives you a 500 gigabyte hard drive. You can expand that by adding external storage to it if you want to. And given basically that It's dependable. It's got TiVo behind it. Their guide data is pretty darn solid, and you can get it at a reasonable price if you're willing to pay the subscription. I wouldn't say there's anything better than that for a lower price, right?
And
So,
honestly, the reason why I never got anything, the reason why I never bought the Channel Master or the other one there's another one that's very similar to Channel Master, I never
mhm.
got it was because for the price. I mean, and I think the boxes itself cost like $100.
Well, the
So,
Channel Master is 250, and you have to add an external drive to that, so it's already up to like
yeah,
$300.
there's another one that's even cheaper than that.
Yeah, there was
And I'm
something
not
other.
sure. But the problem was always I never felt like it was worth it.
Yeah,
I never did because I knew that the guide was going to suck. And the guide on the Xbox One is not great either.
yeah,
It's fine. I mean, it tells you what's on, but like you can't like delete channels until I never want to see this channel again. And
yeah.
if you pick favorites, you can like look through your favorites. But if you press channel up, it's going to the next channel, whether it's your favorite or not, whether your favorites or not. And it just irritates. It's just clunky, and I don't like it.
Hmm.
I also don't like when my wife was there when I was setting up the channels, the favorite channels, and she's like, "What about that one?" I'm like, "Oh, it's in standard definition." Yeah, but maybe we want to watch something in standard definition.
It's not a favorite.
It's she's like, "Just put on the favorites; they'll be fine." I'm like, "Put on the favorites." She goes, "Why does it look all funny and scratchy and have bars on the side?" I'm like, how long? How does none of my knowledge ever rubbed off on you?
Just
How
by
has that never
osmosis.
happened? Anyway, so I
Anyway,
get the TiVo.
Diego, yeah, I vote for the TiVo. If you're willing to absorb the associated costs with it, either the subscription or finding it, hopefully for $300. Because at the $300 one, that's honestly not a bad deal if you're going to be using this for any length of time for the foreseeable future.
And everybody will tell you that the Mohu
Yes,
antennas are the best,
yes,
and
yep,
mine is great. I have to
yep.
put it in the window though. It made a big difference trying to go through a wall versus a window.
Mm-hmm.
Window made a huge difference, like double the channels.
Yeah,
So they give you a nice long cord, anyways. So
and it's just a coax cable, so
that's
you
all it
can
is. So
you can always get a longer coax cable.
yeah,
That's not an issue. Yeah, yeah. I get the Mohu.
yeah. Whichever one is the Sky is the big one now. Is that what
The
it is?
sky's the big one, but that should either go in your attic or outside.
Yeah. So I've got the
Uh,
one that's below that, the Ultimate, I think.
oh, okay. Well, they've got various Leaf models.
Yeah, the Leaf Ultimate.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyways, Jonathan set up his new ELAC speakers,
Ah,
and since the room treatments have and seats haven't arrived yet, he decided to run the Audyssey in the untreated and mostly unfurnished room just to see what would happen.
sure.
The distances were fine, and the speakers were set as small, although crossover at 60 hertz, which he changed to 80.
Okay.
But the speaker levels were below 0 dB. Is this
Yes.
because the room is small and reflective without the treatments?
It's because the speakers are close to you,
Yes.
which is because your room is small. But even if you were in a large room and your speakers were close to you for some reason,
Yeah.
that's still the way it would get
If
set.
we're in an auditorium and you put the speakers the same distance from you as they are right now,
Yep.
they would still be set the same way.
Yep.
So he sent us some pictures of the curves of his room, which obviously will tell you what the curves they're using, sort of. And
Yep.
does the ringing in the room account for the frequency curves as well? And he knows that all this will change after the room has been finished. He just wants to understand what he's looking at
Yeah.
as of right now. And did I close those pictures? I have to find them.
I'm not sure. Just to get back to those levels again, that goes back to what we were talking about with reference volume. The point of those speaker trim levels is that if you turn your master volume up to 0 dB on the relative scale, then you should be hearing things at reference volume. The test tones should play at 75 dB if you select the manual test tones coming out of the Denon. If you're playing a movie that was mixed at full reference volume, now you are hearing it at reference volume. So because the speakers are closer to you, it actually had to make them a little bit quieter so that when you turn it up to 0 dB on the master volume, you'd be hearing reference volume instead of actually louder than reference volume. If you move the speakers farther away from you, then those levels would go down. So it's not so much the ringing of the room or anything like that. It's just about how loud those speakers are, given the distance and how efficient they are. But yeah, back to the frequency curves.
Yes, the frequency curve. So I'm looking at them, and they're mostly getting boosted up in the treble.
Uh-huh.
And they're mostly getting cut around 80 hertz in that area,
Okay.
except below like maybe 60, they are being boosted again. Is that
Yeah.
right? Yeah,
It's
a
a
little
little
bit.
hard. They're a little bit fuzzy, the picture,
It's a little
so
hard. I can't really tell. The
seeing
front,
exactly where it
the thing
is.
that's weird is the front left and right are like almost identical up the north, but you get towards like 200
Yeah,
hertz and lower, and they're totally different.
yeah,
Not
they're
even close.
inverse.
Not quite an inverse, but yeah, they're very close. There's yeah, and then there's the
Which
surround left and rights are like the top end, from like 10 kilohertz up. Maybe that's a 10. I can't read this thing. 100 kilohertz up, maybe 10 kilohertz up, 10 kilohertz up. Can't be 10 kilohertz. I don't know, whatever, 1,000 hertz up. It is almost exactly the same, but below that,
Mhm.
nothing is the same, hardly.
And
Very,
that's not tremendously unexpected. So, just to explain what you're seeing in those graphs, this is when you run the Audyssey setup and then you do the check results at
yeah,
the end of it, and it shows you the EQ. This is essentially showing you what the equalizer is doing, what Audyssey has decided that the equalizer should do. If you did the copy function in the manual equalizer, you would get something that looks similar to this, and then you would be able to manually adjust it up and down at various specific frequencies in the manual version. But in the automatic version, it's showing you where it boosted things and where it cut things. And seeing these things where the pairs of speakers are very similar above 1,000 hertz and then different from one another below 1,000 hertz or so, that is largely due to your room. In a very small room, you're going to start to have room effects at a considerably higher frequency. In a room the size of Jonathan's, I'd expect to start seeing the room really taking over up around 300, 400 hertz. So that the speaker itself is having a much smaller effect on what you ultimately hear versus what the room is adding to the sound. So it's not unexpected that because of the different placement, it's not exactly a perfectly symmetrical placement that he's got in this room, that at the below the 1,000 hertz that you're seeing quite different between the left and right speakers of a pair. That's not unexpected, and that will probably change once you have some room treatments and furniture in that room. That will affect those things for sure.
yeah. That one that's all by itself has got to be the center channel. I was thinking it might be a sub,
It
but
should be, yeah.
it's got to be a center channel.
There's one that's all by itself. Yeah, so seeing that it's done a fair amount of boosting in the high frequencies. Last week in our hangout party after the show, which is something we do after we're done the recording session, we have a hangout party where you can come and just chat with us casually. One of our listeners, it's Andy, right?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, he does his own website where he does reviews and that, and he got some of these ELAC speakers and measured them. He's like, yeah, they're a little rolled off in the highs, which is not hugely unexpected at speakers of this price point. So not hugely surprising that there was some boosting of the high frequencies for Audyssey when it's trying to equalize these things and essentially make them linear.
Yeah,
So yeah, that's what you're seeing there, a graphic representation of what the equalizer is doing.
there you go. So ringing in the room. I mean, the room itself is doing this, so it's not specifically the ringing. The ringing that if you're talking about like when you clap and you can hear it going back and forth, that's the effect of the sound bouncing around the room, and therefore, that's how the room is affecting the sound.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, Brandon says that we were right that his speaker budget is $1,500. I guess we said that.
Yeah, last week he was laying out a couple of options.
Oh yeah, we could have figured it out. Okay.
Yeah.
Also, although the entire room is 25 by 16 by 8.5, he has to leave a space for the kids to play on the other side of the room, so the seating will only be about 9 feet. Seating distance will be about 9 feet.
Yeah, because we were wondering last week. We're like, oh, is he 15 feet away, farther than 15? Because with 25-foot long room, he might be.
Well, he's sitting smack dab in the middle of the room. It sounds like 9 feet, right? 16.
So, no, it's 25 feet long room.
Oh, so he's gonna. Oh,
so,
I don't know.
So half of the room is open behind him for a kid's play area. So it's basically like only half of this room is sort of the theater area, quote unquote.
So, with that in mind, would SVS Prime Satellite 5.0 package and 2 PB1000s be adequate? Will the SVS satellites have enough output? His wife would really prefer the satellites or some other bookshelves over the Pioneer or ELAC speakers. Aha!
Yes,
so the answer to your question is yes. Satellites will be great because that's what your wife wants and that's what you get, and you just like it. Remember that.
Don't need the towers in terms of output. That's for sure.
The conversation we just had with Jonathan, I think, informs your answer here. Why is his why are his speakers sounding the way they are? Why are they getting cut in his room? Well, it's because he's sitting close to him. If you're sitting close to him, you don't have to have as big as speakers.
Yeah.
So would these work? The seating distance is 9 feet.
Yeah. So the tricky part of this is the lower you get into the bass, the more the room matters. The higher you go, the less the room matters, particularly the closer you sit. So the issue here is, will the satellites be able to play loud enough, low enough to give you a really good transition over to the subwoofers in this size room? Now, this is not a gigantic room. It's between 3,000 and 4,000 cubic feet. So it's a large room, but it's not enormous. But right in that sort of 80 hertz region where we'd normally have speakers crossing over to subs, I would venture that maybe those satellite speakers will start to struggle somewhere below or somewhere before 80 hertz.
Yes.
Yeah. So the solution there, though, is quite simple. If you have two subwoofers and they're set up nicely in this room so that you're getting nice uniform bass across your seats, you can cross them over higher. You can cross them at 100 or 120 hertz. And you're not really going to notice the subwoofers themselves becoming localizable when you have a pair of them and they're positioned across the room from one another. So 9 feet away, the prime satellites are totally fine in the mid-range and treble. If you get a pair of PB1000s, they should be able to adequately handle this room size. And you might just have to cross them over a bit higher. That might be the only real caveat here. But the question is, do you want 5 satellites, particularly the center? I'm so tempted to say get the prime center because it's such a nice center, but then it probably goes over his budget.
Maybe, yeah.
Yeah. I can give you an alternative, which is the Ascend Acoustics HTM 200s. They're not as pretty. They're like flatter black and kind of pie-faced, but they can play a little bit louder than the satellites.
How much are those satellites?
They're altogether like I don't even know because they have the subwoofer in there in the package. So I think they're putting them together for like $500 basically.
So the NHTs too, the Super Zeros.
The NHTs, the Super Zeros.
Those are tiny.
Oh yeah, what's their center like? They have that Super Zero center, don't they?
I actually don't know. I don't think I've looked at that. I'd have to look at that.
Yeah, the only thing about the SVS Prime satellite package that gives me pause is using one of those satellites as your center.
Yeah.
That's the only thing that gives me pause there. So
what you do is buy everything but the center and then buy the center later.
That's true. Yeah.
That's, use a Phantom center for now. What you're going to do is you're going to measure 12.5 feet into your room. And then you're going to place your subwoofers on either side of each other, 12.5 feet into your room. And then you're going to tell your kids, this is where, right here, if you're past the subwoofer, that is the line. You put a piece of tape across the ground. Say, if you cross this tape, too far.
That's a good idea. It's right there in the middle. Right
there in the middle. That's the place for your subs. Okay. Plan it out now. Tell your wife, all right, well, we're getting the small speakers and stuff, but I got to put the subs right here. That's what I have to do. That's what I have to. Tom and Rob said that. If you have a problem with it, you can call Rob. Carl asks, didn't IMAX have an immersive audio format in the pipeline? There isn't one listed on their website anymore. What gives?
I don't know what gives on their website, but they do have their own immersive audio format.
Do they?
It is a 12.1 and it is channel based.
I read about it and I'm like, I kind of felt like they just were like taking somebody else's stuff and doing it, and like taking it, like OEMing it. It did not really feel to me like IMAX has actually done anything special with the recording. Like you can read in the article, they're talking all about the lasers. It's all lasers.
Yes.
Because they got a laser 4K, 8K thing, so that's bright
and that's
3D.
Where this 12.1 immersive audio setup is being found is in the laser IMAX theaters. So the traditional IMAX theaters are still there. It's actually 5.1. That's what they were using. So that's still in there. But the laser ones that they're updating, they're putting in this 12.1 system. But it is channel-based, so it's not object-based like Atmos or DTSX. Each of those 12 speakers is individually addressed and individually mixed, so it's a completely separate mix. If a studio wants to use it, they have to create an entirely separate mix specifically for that purpose. So I don't know why it's not on their website, but it does exist. It's part of their laser theaters, and yeah, that's it.
Yeah. You're never going to have to worry about ever. I mean, you could go experience it, but it's never
Yeah,
coming to the home.
there's speakers overhead.
That's right. And the second question is, Tom, have mentioned that I can't have an Atmos system because I have a ceiling fan.
Yeah.
But couldn't the fan be taken down and put back up because after the speakers are installed, or would the movement of the air interfere with the sound? No. My real problem is that I have a flat roof above here, and it is about 5, 6, 8 inches thick. And I am not at all interested in taking down the drywall and trying to run wires up there. Especially I think the slats go this way. Well, meaning not in a good way. Any way they go is not a good way.
Yeah, either way. Yeah.
It doesn't make any difference. I am not interested in doing it. That's number one. Number two, no, it's not the fan that's in the way when I'm trying to put it. It's like I can turn off the fan when I'm putting up the speakers. That's not the issue. The issue is that the fan is basically sitting sort of where your top middle, center right, center top right, whatever they call it, the one on the right, it would be there, and the blades are long enough that the blades would be going right underneath the one that would be over my head, which is the one that would be.
You could do top fronts and top rears.
I could
go on either side.
I could. I'm saying that I have the reason I was talking about the fan messing up
is the Atmos, upward firing.
It was because of the Atmos enabled speakers that are firing up to the ceiling and then coming back down. So, Carl, that's what you're thinking of. You're thinking of me talking about it's never going to work for me because it's going to bounce off the fan, and it certainly will have to bounce off the fan. The fun part is it really is only the right speaker that will bounce off the fan. The left one will get to me just fine because this fan is offset in this room. Why? I don't know. Designed by the devil. That's why I think.
If it were on, that would affect the sound. If your fan was actually on and spinning.
Which it always is. It's never off. I was getting mad when it gets through.
I mean, have you ever just turned on a fan and talked into it?
Yeah.
Right? Put your face in front of it. Speaker's going to do the same thing.
Everything sounds like Darth Vader. You're all my kids are all very excited about that whenever they figure that one out again.
So yeah, a moving fan would be a problem for pretty much any Atmos speakers. A stationary fan, yeah, you could have speakers installed around it. So
yeah,
that's true.
Kyle, Rob recommended the APC P8V power conditioner, but
it's
Kyle,
not a power conditioner; it's just a surge protector with EMI filtration. So it's not a power conditioner.
So let's correct you right there, Kyle. But Kyle wants something that's rack mountable. Is the Furman M8X2 comparable to the APC?
Yeah, more or less.
Probably more expensive, isn't it?
Pretty much is. It's very slightly. It's actually very affordable.
Is it really? Furman usually, Max and Furman usually.
No, I mean this M8X. It's it's a surge protector. It's just a rack mountable surge protector. It has a lower there's the joules rating for how much of a surge it can absorb before it kaputs. So that's lower than that APC unit that I mentioned. It's about it though.
I
still
honestly
through
don't care
15 amps.
As long as it doesn't kaput everything else at the same time.
That's right. Yeah.
I just want it to die. I want it to sacrifice itself for the greater good. As long as it does.
So yeah, a little strangely, APC doesn't have a huge number of rack mountable units, but they do have their G type. Their G type is what they call their rack mountable units. So they do have a G5, which is their 15 amp rack mountable unit. You can find it for about $150, which is like a little over twice the price of that Furman. So yeah, the Furman's not a bad deal at all. I mean, really what you need for your amplifiers, for your receiver, for your subwoofers, because you don't really want to plug those things into a voltage regulator, because sometimes amplifiers and voltage regulators have odd problems, like burning up the amp.
Explode fuses and set things on fire. Yes.
Don't.
Amplifiers and specifically subwoofers should just be plugged directly into the wall.
Yeah.
They have all their protection in there. They have fuses. They're not. They're going to be fine.
But if you simply need more outlets, which is a perfectly common thing to have happening, where you're plugging in your AV receiver and you can't plug it directly into the wall because you need more outlets, just a basic surge protector that lets through the full 15 amps, because a lot of power conditioners don't allow through the full 15 amps. They allow through like 12 amps or sometimes even less than that. That's very common. So that's why I like that APC for a basic surge protector. And that Furman looks like it's perfectly fine. So yeah.
All right, Deepon. It doesn't have a projector yet, but he does already have a hush box built into the ceiling in the back of his room, 19 feet from the screen.
Yep.
Wow. Anyways, he wrote this a while back, and as a reminder, this is a custom-built dedicated theater that's about 26 by 20 with 12-foot ceilings and 2 rows of seats.
Yeah.
The problem is
It's
the lens.
nice too.
The problem is the lens would be about 33 inches higher than the top edge of the 130 2.35 to 1 screen.
Now, that's actually 130 inches wide that he's considering.
Oh, he's not talking about diagonal.
Not diagonal. So he's considering 130 inches wide with a 2.35 to 1 aspect ratio.
So that's going to be, it'd be a bigger number for the.
Yes. Let me work out what that is.
Pythagorean's theorem, right? A squared plus B squared.
That's
no,
right.
A squared plus B squared equals C squared. So
I'll work it out while you.
All right. Anyways, the projector with 80% vertical lens shift can only compensate for 22 inches of vertical offset. So he's 11 inches shy.
And that math is not correct.
Yeah, let's.
So I'll get into that in a bit.
Yeah, if he goes with a bigger screen, the top edge would end up being higher, but even at 150 inches, the screen is still not enough. Is he calculating this right? Rob already said no.
Nope.
So what is the actual calculation?
Yeah, so the way when they're listing the percentage of vertical offset, right? So with the normal projectors, normal home theater projectors, you have to imagine that out of the box without any lens shift being applied, the center line of the lens is equal to the center line of the screen. So let's just say your screen is 50 inches tall. Let's just, hypothetically say that's what it is. 25 inches are below the center line of the lens, and 25 inches are above the center line of the lens. Now, when they say it has 80% vertical lens shift available to it, you take the total height, that 50 inches, and multiply it by 80%, which is like 40, right? 40 inches. And so what that allows you to do is, let's say you've got that 25 inches below the center line, right? Add another 40 inches to that, or 80% of the total screen height. Now that's where the bottom or the top of the screen, depending on which way you're shifting it, has moved, right? So that's your calculation there, but then you have to subtract from that number half of the screen's height to tell you the actual height at which the projector itself is now above or below the top edge of the screen. So what this all breaks down to is if you have 80% vertical lens shift on a screen size that's anywhere from about 100 to about 150 inches diagonal, it makes shockingly little difference. There is some difference because it is a percentage, but it's essentially 15 inches that the center line of the projector lens can now be above or below the entire screen itself. And what's extra interesting is that, let's say you have set it to the maximum vertical offset. So let's say you're throwing a 120-inch diagonal screen. You have the projector 15 inches physically above the top edge of that screen. If you zoom in the image, so you're making the image larger. Now you're going from 120 inches to 130 inches, let's say. Not only does the whole image get bigger, it also moves down just a little bit because that percentage remains the same.
Right.
So the really important thing, because he's talking about, okay, he wants to use zoom or an anamorphic lens, one or the other, because he's going to have this CinemaScope wide screen, and then 16:9 images are going to be smaller than the CinemaScope screen. They're going to be the same height, but they're not going to be as wide. It's very important to make all your calculations based off of the smallest screen size that you're considering. Now, if he's using an anamorphic lens, they're both going to have the same height, so it doesn't really matter. The lens shift isn't going to change. But if he's doing the zoom, it matters quite a bit because the smaller one is going to be, in this case, 55 inches tall. But then when he zooms in the projector, makes the image larger to fill the entire width of his CinemaScope screen, you have to remember there are black bars above and below that image that are being projected above and below the screen. So now the actual top edge of the image is up higher. But if you just zoom it in, it actually moves lower. So you have to adjust the lens shift, which is why it has lens memory. These, the projectors that have the motorized stuff, they have the lens memory to adjust all that. So basically, his screen he's looking at is going to be about 55 inches tall. The most the projector can be above the top edge of that screen is about 15 inches. That's what you should be looking at, not 22 or more. So even worse news for you, Deepon.
Oh, good.
Sorry. But better to know.
Yes, would this still be a problem with a 16:9 screen? And the answer, of course, is yes. It would be a problem. It's the same deal.
Yeah, because you're still focusing on where your CinemaScope image is going to be, and you still want HD TV content to be smaller than the CinemaScope image, right? You don't want your HD TV content to look like IMAX in comparison.
Yeah. So he's asking, should you just mount the projector from the ceiling and close off the hush box?
You kind of have to, unless you want to use Keystone or move your screen physically considerably higher.
Yeah.
You know? But it's because he has a 12-foot ceiling. That's why his projector's so high. It's so unusually high.
Can you extend the hush box lower? Can you do that?
Yeah,
is that cheaper? Because I mean, if I had a hush box, I'd really want to use it.
Yeah, it's because the hush box is built into the structure of the ceiling. It's not like a separate hush box.
There is no way you can tell me that you can just go and chop the bottom of the thing off and just extend it. Sure, you can. Someone could do it.
Yeah. It's tricky because the projectors that he's looking at. We'll get into that in a moment, but he's looking at like Sony's and JVCs because that's the sort of price range that he's playing in. Ones that can do pseudo 4K or genuine 4K. Even like the Epson LS10000, the one that uses a laser light engine, they all do have between like 80-85% vertical lens offset. So none of them are going to give you like 130 degrees vertical offset, which is kind of what you need in this situation. So you're going to have to somehow get your projector either physically lower or the screen physically higher, or both. Move the screen somewhat up and the projector somewhat down. But where they are right now, not going to work without Keystone correction.
Doesn't work.
Yeah.
So he basically wants to nail down what his screen setup should be, which is a good idea.
Yeah.
He's planning on a 4K or pseudo 4K projector, and a 120-inch wide screen. That was recommended to him, but he'd consider going larger if it means better immersion. Do you think IMAX is better immersion? In which case, big. He's considering a Seymour AV Center Stage XD acoustically transparent screen, the 1.2 gain on the axis. So if he wants a nice, bright image, how much light output does he need from the projector, and how large a screen could he go for?
Yeah, lots to unpack here. But
so he sent us some diagrams. I don't know if I opened them, but I didn't.
Those were actually older diagrams that I dug back because I wanted to get a look at his
Yes, I remember. I think I closed these because it's like on a napkin or something.
Oh no, these are fully
drawn. Is that the one I'm thinking of?
No, that was a different one. But yeah, I can tell why that 120-inch width of a screen was recommended to him, because now I might be off by some inches or even some feet here, but going by the diagrams that he's got laid out, which seem pretty to scale and everything, it looks as though his first row of seats is going to be about 11.5 feet eyes to screen, and his second row of seats should be about 17 feet eyes to screen. If I've got those distances correct, it perfectly lines up with the idea of a 120-inch width screen, because that creates just a little bit more, about 46 to 47-inch degree field of view for that front row, and a nice like 32-degree field of view for the second row. And those figures line up very nicely with like SAMPTE, THX recommendations for what your viewing angle ought to be. They happen to be viewing angles that I personally really enjoy. But if you're someone, when you go to the movie theater, likes to sit closer, I like to sit 1/3 of the length of the theater away from the back wall in a commercial movie theater. That's my preferred seat if I can get it. But if you like to sit closer because you like a larger image, nothing wrong with that. And maybe that's the case for Deepon. I would say going larger than the 130-inch width of a screen that he suggested, I wouldn't advise going any larger than that. That's giving you a 50-degree field of view for that front row. It's giving you like a 36-degree field of view for that second row. And, that's starting to get into the range where you're definitely going to have to start turning your head in that front row to see the sides of the image. And I'm not a huge fan of that. More than that, you start getting into worries about light output of the projector as well.
So what is
So
this second picture we're looking at? Is that the alcove where the projector goes, or is
yeah,
that
that's
the
the back
alcove?
of the room. That's the
I wish
back
he
of
would
the
have said
room in that second
that.
picture. So
Yeah, it doesn't look like he's going to be able to move that hush box down in any way, shape, or
I
form.
know it's built in.
This is
So
obviously custom. Just call your custom guy and say, how come you did this wrong? I told you to lower it by 15 and a half inches, I think. Something, maybe 20, just to be safe.
yeah. So the thing is, looking at his diagrams of the height of his screen, I think he's got it about right. Because honestly, you don't want the top of the very top edge of the screen to be more than about 15 to 20 degrees above where your eyes are. Now, the thing is, it looks like he's going to have recliners.
Yeah,
So there's a chance that when you're reclined back, your resting eye level, because that's what we're really concerned about. If you were
right.
sitting up straight, your resting eye level is going to be basically, 90 degrees perpendicular to the floor. It's going to be, or parallel to the floor, rather. It's going to be straight ahead. But when you're reclined, your resting eye level is going up at a bit of an angle. So you take your resting eye level and add about 15 degrees above that, and that should be the top of your screen. So you might be able to move that screen up a little bit, but more or less where he's showing it looks about right to me.
Yeah, it does to me too,
It's
unfortunately.
it's not way too low or anything like that. So I think you're going to have to drop down that projector somehow. Now the good news is, if you go for the Sony or the JVC, which are the ones he talked about, they're very quiet. They are very quiet projectors. So having them outside of a hush box is not the end of the world, because they are not loud, noisy fan type projectors at all. So that's good news there. And they do both have this 80 to 85 percentage vertical offset, very good images. And what I'm excited about is that JVC's newest ones, the ones they just announced, so these are like the X550, X750, X950, they're brighter this year. And you're going to need that if you're going for this 130-inch width of a screen. So the ones that were out last year that could, now they were rated at like 1300 lumens last year. Every projector, you can take that and basically cut it in half. And that's about what they actually produce once they're calibrated.
Right.
So everyone who calibrated the old JVCs, they said, yeah, once you calibrate it, they get between 700 and 750 lumens of light output. And if you were going for your standard 12 to 14 foot Lamberts of screen luminance, then you could get up to about 120-inch width of a screen. That might be another reason why that was recommended to you, because a lot of those projectors that are in the rated at like 1500 lumen range, they look really good on about 120-inch width of a screen. But the new ones, which are now compatible with high dynamic range, now they've boosted up to like 1800, 1900 lumens rated. And I would be shocked if they didn't actually output maybe 900 lumens, actual lumens, if they're going to claim that they're high dynamic range.
Right.
Once you get to about 900 lumens, you're right in the butter zone for a 130-inch width of a screen. So I actually think the new JVCs with their like 1800 lumen output with a 130-inch width screen, if you really know for sure that you do actually like to sit closer in the movie theater than I personally do, then that's a good choice. You've got about the right amount of light output. You've got a reasonably affordable projector that's compatible with 4K and high dynamic range, which is nice, and a good size screen, and it's quiet.
It's going to be a nice room. It's really pretty.
Very nice.
Infinite Gary noticed that in the Audioholics review of the Yamaha AS801, Gene and Hugo warned against setting the impedance selector switch to 4 ohms, saying it would in effect cripple the amp's capability, but didn't really explain why or how. So can we answer that? Yeah, there's been a selector switches on amps since I've been around, and it says 4 ohms or 6 ohms or 8 ohms or something like that. Usually it's 8 ohm switch, and then you could put it. The idea here is that we've talked about how ohms work, right? Where it's not pushing power through, it's sucking power through. So your amplifier or your speaker in this case is asking for 4 ohms, which effectively doubles the amount of wattage that has to come that the amplifier is supposed to be providing, as compared to an 8 ohm speaker. That can tax an amplifier, and if you do it too long, too loud, asking too much of it, it can send it into oscillation. It can burn it up. It can send it into protection mode.
Yeah.
Do all sorts of nasty things.
Hopefully protection mode out of all of those options is what happens.
So what you want to happen. But when you flick the selector switch, what it basically does is it says, hey, we're not going to let you just take whatever you want. We're going to limit the amount of power that can come out of this thing. So we in effect, will never have to go into protection mode because it can no longer just request, just demand its 4 ohms and that sort of thing. Sort of puts in like a dam, so to speak.
Yeah.
So Gene and Hugo, what they're saying here is that if you leave it in 8 ohms and it asks for 4 ohms and it's not doing such a bad, so many terrible things that it sends your amp into protection mode, well, then you got, your speakers are getting the power they need. But if you flick that switch, there's a chance that your speakers will not get the power they need when they actually do need it, and your amp actually could provide it.
Yeah, yeah. It puts a ceiling on it. It effectively limits, chokes the available amperage coming out of there. It does that in the name of never overheating. But there is more power available, particularly because most speakers, if they dip down to 4 ohms or lower, only do so at a couple of frequencies. And how often are we playing sustained frequencies for a huge long period of time? That's really the issue. If there's only that certain frequency where it dips down to that impedance in that speaker, and that note is only playing for a brief amount of time, you have the available power in the storage capacitors to deliver that.
There's 4.
But if you flick it to that 4 ohm setting, then it eliminates that headroom. It says, nope, no matter what happens, I will not deliver more amperage than this amount. And it just leaves it there. So you end up with this horrible soft clipping sound, because that's what it's doing. It's applying a filter on there to soft clip the signal. And yeah, that definitely affects the sound. It affects the transients of sounds. The attacks of sounds are completely clipped off. So that's why they say,
as long as I've been in this game, the advice has always been not to turn that switch down to anything. Never touch that switch. Leave it in 8 ohms and don't ever touch it.
But if you're sitting 12 feet away and you can feel the heat coming off of your AV receiver, maybe turn the volume down a little bit.
Still don't touch that switch. Martin, we recommended that he buy an Epson 5030 UB over the Epson 4855WU for better black levels, and because he probably didn't need the extra light output of the 4855. He would like to go with the 5030 as long as it will have enough output. Okay. And while he has pretty good light control, there might occasionally be some ambient light, such as during football parties. Is there any way to measure how much ambient light is too much? Could he use a photographer's light meter, for example? In my room right now, with the amount of light that is on me at this moment, if I turned on my projector, I could still see it. I mean, I could still watch a football game.
It would look washed out.
It would be washed out. But this is with a ceiling fan on and the light in there going at full blast. It's only sort of dimmer. If I turn the projector on, it would be fine. And that's an eco mode, and with calibrated to the proper dark, black levels and all that stuff. So if your goal, when there is a little bit of ambient light because of your football playing buddies can't close a door because they're animals, then they'll still be able to see the game.
Right.
So if your goal is for people still to be able to see it, then you will be fine. If your goal is that it's still going to be perfectly calibrated and the dark levels and everything like that, then you're going to have to control the ambient light no matter what. So if you're not saying to us, it's like the sun is beating down through 3 skylights and glass, in which case directly onto the screen, in which case I'd say, yeah, that's going to be a problem. But if it's just lights, you'll be okay.
Yeah, like you could. It's difficult to even use like a photographer's light meter because those are usually a lux meter, right? So a lux meter is like you put it up next to the thing you're going to photograph to figure out your white balance, right? Like that's what you're using it for. You're not actually like getting a gathering of how much total light is in the room or something like that. It's not really the appropriate way to do this. There's a much easier way, which is just to use your eyeballs and basically an analogous way of figuring out how much light you have and whether you need a projector that is capable of showing you nice deep dark black levels and good contrast, or one that just goes for sheer light output because you're never going to be in a situation where you could make use of nice deep dark black levels. So our goal in like a dedicated theater is pitch blackness from I can put my hand 2 inches in front of my face and still not be able to see it, complete pitch blackness like that, all the way up to I can just barely read a newspaper in this room. Right? If you're anywhere in that range, then you can actually make use of darker black levels. Now, something like the JVC projectors, which get blacker than pretty much any other consumer projector, if you get up to the level of I can barely read a newspaper in here, and that's the lowest your light level is ever going to be, then you're kind of wasting that JVC. Because the JVC basically wants your ambient light to be below the threshold at which you could possibly read a newspaper in that room. Otherwise, you're kind of wasting those inky deep black levels. But if you're anywhere in that range, you are totally making use of like the 5030s black levels versus the 4855s for sure. Once you get into the threshold of, yeah, I can read a newspaper in here. You know, maybe it's not like super easy, but I can basically read a newspaper in here. If your light level is never, ever, ever below that, that is the blackest it will ever be in that room, is totally enough light to read a newspaper by, then I would start to look at projectors that are focusing on light output versus black levels. Because look, you've got enough light to totally read a newspaper. Look at your screen. That's as black as it's ever going to be. That's the blackest that screen can possibly be in that room. So don't focus on a projector that does really good black levels at that point. But he's going to be watching at night. He's going to have some light control. I'm certain he's going to have some situations where he's got less, you know, he's got into that range of I can just barely read a newspaper in here, or maybe even lower. So the 5030 is totally worth it at that point. And the 5030 was already considered a bright projector. It can get up to like 1500 lumens. Like real, actual output 1500 lumens if you turn it into high lamp mode and you're not in like cinema mode, but not even dynamic mode. Like that's like standard or living room mode where the colors are still pretty okay and totally fine for football. It can do like 1500 lumens. That's a bright projector as is. So yeah, totally not worried about using it for a football game. And I know your light level is going to get below that newspaper reading level. So yeah, stick with that one. Trying to decide, right? How to pronounce the name.
Yep. Mahidar? Mahidar? Is that
I think it's Mahidar. Yeah.
Mahidar?
I think so. We apologize if we are mangling your name. We are going phonetically.
I can't. Okay. Anyways, this Mr. M is using Plex on his HTPC as a front end for his DVD Blu-ray collection stored on his Synology NAS network accessible storage.
Yeah.
The HDMI output of the PC runs through his Denon EVR, and the Denon's HDMI output goes to his Oppo BDP 103, then to his display. He's noticed that the standard definition content looks better if he just uses the Oppo's network file playback, bypassing his HTPC and Plex's upscaling entirely. But that means losing the nicer Plex interface. So if there's some way to disable the SD or standard definition upscaling in Plex and output the native resolution.
Oh, so
Is it going to be a long one? Is it going to take you a while to say this?
Oh, you wanted to run off.
I want to go run and drink. I want to get a beer.
I can probably drag this out if you need
Let's
me to.
not drag it out.
Yeah.
About that.
My honest answer is I'm not 100% certain because I have not spent enough time digging into both sides of Plex. Plex is a two-part system. There's a server and there is the playback device, what they sometimes call the client, or on the HTPC. Right now, the public version is called Plex Home Theater. It's a desktop app that you can use as the Plex client. They have a new one if you have Plex Pass. It's in preview right now that they're now calling Plex Media Player. That's their new version. Plex Home Theater worked off of an old version of XBMC. They took XBMC and modified it because XBMC is open source, and that became Plex Home Theater. The new one, they've done away with the XBMC code. They're using totally new code now in the media player version. But anyway, all of that aside, there's two sides of it. There's what the server is serving up, and there's what the client is pulling down and actually displaying. And going through the forums, going through the help pages, going through the support, quite a few people are complaining because they want more control over what resolution Plex home theater outputs. And they're complaining because you essentially pick one resolution and everything gets scaled to that in Plex home theater's output. Now, the reason they do that is because they want to avoid the issues where you're sometimes changing between resolutions coming out of a computer, which I've experienced, which is even switching from 1080p 60 to 1080p 24. There's a whole new HDMI handshake to make that work.
You get the blinking and all that.
You get the blinking. Sometimes it cuts out. Sometimes the handshake fails. Sometimes your audio cuts out.
That's always fun.
So the reason Plex has said, hey, we're basically setting one output resolution is for that reason. And some people have even complained because you can't select 1080i as an output resolution right now. It's either 720p or 1080p or 480p. So some people want 1080i because they're using like a matrix HDMI switch that doesn't have enough bandwidth for 1080p. And they're like, I have to revert to 720p. I have to go down to that. So this seems to be a fairly common problem. There doesn't appear, again, I'm not 100% in this, but there does not appear to be a way for Plex Home Theater or Plex Media Server to switch output resolutions on the fly. So that's the best answer I can give you right now. I could potentially be wrong, but Mahadir in his emails mentioned some things that makes me think he's definitely looked into this, and no one ends up with this signal chain without having some idea of what they're doing.
Right.
So
yeah, you didn't stick your Oppo at the very end of your signal chain because you're like, I don't know, whatever. Let's stick all this stuff in this order. You knew what you were doing, dude.
So I'm pretty sure he's gone through the settings. I'm pretty sure he was just wondering if maybe we knew something different, and I do not. I think you already know the situation. Which
you know what problem probably ends up happening? The problem he ends up having is somebody comes to his house and sees his signal chain and goes, "Oh, you've got this all messed up." And then he's got to explain to them for like a half an hour why it's the way it is.
My Oppo is a video processor.
And at the end, they're just like, whatever, and they don't understand, and it's got to be infuriating anyway. So I'm sorry we can't help you. My solution is to wait, because I'm betting they're going to fix that. I'm betting they're going to add that in there because enough people are going to cry about it, just like it now says, DTS HD master audio on the front of our receivers. It never was supposed to. All right, Brian wants to build some DIY corner traps to help control his two 18-inch subs. I was thinking of building wood frames using standard wall insulation cut into triangles and covering it with something like black burlap. But I appreciate our advice on building materials and rough dimensions. This is something that you can find online very readily. Sorry. They call them sometimes called chunk traps.
Super chunks.
Super chunks. That's it.
Super chunks.
First of all, regular standard wall insulation is not effective. Not good.
Well, I mean, it works. It's just a terrible thing to work with.
Yes. Physically. Well, it's not as good as your Rockwool or your Owens Corning 703s.
Yeah, more rigid. You want something more rigid.
You want a rigid fiberglass board. Yeah. Those come in 2x4 and different thicknesses, but so the 2x4s from whatever this, it's 2 feet by 4 feet by 4 inches thick. It's probably what you want to buy.
Maybe.
Whatever. You cut it. What?
Well, they have the ones that are meant to fit inside of 16-inch on center studs as well, right?
Oh, do they? Okay. I didn't know that.
They've got the ones that are meant to fit in between 24-inch on center, and then they've got the ones that are meant to fit in between 16-inch on center. Now, you got to remember the side that's going to be facing your room, so the actual flat face that would be like what you actually see that has the cover over it. That's the hypotenuse. That's the hypotenuse of the two sides. So when it's like, what does it end up being, 15.25 inches because it's 16-inch on center or whatever it is, right? Yeah. The hypotenuse of that is going to be like 21 point something inches. Whereas if it's the 2 foot by, the 2 foot width, the ones that are meant to fit in between 24-inch on center, then your hypotenuse is closer to 28, 29, something like that. So it depends on how wide do you actually want that front face to be, because sometimes you just don't have the physical space to have something that sticks, that's going to be 2 feet along each side wall and then a pretty big fat face across the front. Whereas if you use the 16-inch on center ones, then it's only, 15.5 inches down each wall and not even 2 feet across. So there's the options there as far as
regardless, you're going to get something that's rectangular. You're going to cut it into squares. And then you're going to cut those squares into triangles, and then you're going to stack them floor to ceiling, and then you build a frame to go around it, and you pop on the the fabric, which is I just buy the speaker grill fabric from Diane's fabric store or whatever. It's not expensive. You can get the burlap stuff too. That's fine as well, but whatever. And we'll have some links on the podcast.
Yeah, if you want fancy designer stuff, everyone uses the Guilford of Maine fabrics, but that's,
those are really expensive.
It is unnecessarily expensive for a bass trap. Yeah, the nice thing about the corner super chunk type systems is that you don't need much of a frame, because if you use the rigid fiberglass or the rock wool, it's got enough structure of its own that you're just stacking them triangles on top of each other, and you really only need the frame to hold the speaker grill cloth in front of it. That's so right. Yeah, the links that we'll have, basically most people, if stacking it from floor to ceiling, they'll put in like one brace sort of in the middle, like 4 feet up the wall.
And then so a brace compress on itself.
Yeah. And then a brace at the top and a brace at the bottom, and then they just use like industrial strength Velcro, or they just cut the frame so that, at a 45-degree angle, so that they create a nice flat front where you can attach a frame to that. But very simple build. And all that matters is whether you went for the 16-inch on center or the 24-inch on center width of the solid rigid fiberglass. That's all that matters. So links. We'll have links.
All right. We need to stop, I guess.
We should hit Andrew's just because, he did
I was trying to get to Monty, but we're not going to make it to Monty. Andrew has, this is from our offline rant line. Yes, we have a phone number. It still works. Amazingly, it still works. Andrew has front tower speakers, a center speaker above his TV, tower surround speakers, and surround back speakers on the walls behind him. He has already got pre-wire locations up high near his ceiling, above his front left and right speakers, and above his surround speakers. He also has 4 pre-wire locations for subwoofers, but he only has 2 subwoofers at the moment. Only 2. It was enough, dude. But fine, you can get 4. Since he does not have any speaker pre-wire locations actually in the ceiling overhead, would he still get an audible benefit from upgrading to Atmos? Would Audyssey compensate for his existing positions not lining up exactly with where Dolby would like them? Should he consider running speaker wire down the wall from these pre-wire locations to make use of upward firing modules that he could put on top of his towers and fronts and surround? What? Lost me there. If you're going to use the speaker wire it's already there, you should run it towards the center of the room on your ceiling, so you can use ceiling speakers. You're not going to use put them
upward
on
firing
modules, because modules are garbage, and everybody knows that.
Aww.
Don't awe me.
I don't think it's true. They're not garbage.
If you're going to run wires that are basically on your ceiling back down to your speakers, no, don't do that.
It's where the pre-wires are.
Run it across the ceiling towards whatever. No, okay, first of all, if they're pretty close to something that's already a choice on your menu, you can use them where they're at. So your front heights are essentially what you're going to have there, and rear backs, maybe.
You could call them top middles for where they are.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because they're above his surround speakers on the sides of the room.
Yeah.
So honestly, you're perfectly set up for Oro.
Yeah.
Funnily enough, you're like perfectly set up for what
How
Oro
do you
3D
feel about
wants you to do.
People dancing and singing in the middle of stuff in Indian or Sanskrit or whatever that language is? Because that's what those are your options.
Yeah.
So you can dance the musical. I don't know.
That's not in Oro. That's yeah. So funnily enough, you are perfectly set up for Oro, but of course there's shockingly little content for you actually to be able to play back in that setup.
I like the Oro guys too. They seem like they're nice people.
So the front height positions, totally fine. The ones that are pre-wired above your front left and right speakers, you can absolutely use those. You can use those for Atmos, DTS-X, any of the existing up mixers that we used to have, Dolby Pro Logic 2Z, and all of them, DTS Neo X back then. So front height's totally fine. The ones that are on the wall but close to the ceiling above your surround speakers, those are a little bit unusual. However, Golden Ear, SVS, Polk, a lot of these companies have done demonstrations where they did exactly that. They said, instead of having speakers on the ceiling, we're going to put them close to the ceiling but on the wall above the existing speakers, and we're going to call them top rears or top middles because that's the closest position that they are. But it works pretty well. It doesn't give you the total, yes, that's directly overhead sensation, because of course it doesn't. But it works pretty darn well. So I don't have a huge problem with doing it this way. It's certainly the most convenient since you've already got the pre-wire there. It does allow you to hear Atmos in a setting that's, it's audible. You'll notice it as much as you would a different Atmos setup, other than having speakers directly physically above you. Audyssey will not compensate for their location because it doesn't do that, but it will still set them up properly as far as distance and level goes, and equalizing them so that they're giving you flat frequency response. So I think you're in pretty good shape doing that. I got zero problem with that.
I mean, if you really want to get them overhead, like I said, just run the wire down the wall, down the ceiling, and put a speaker up there, and then just paint them or put some sort of track there or something like that.
Use the flat speaker wire, the flat paintable adhesive speaker wire.
Yeah. I mean, you can do it. All right, Monty, Bill, who has a whole slew of freaking questions, it looks like. Jim, Joshua, Timothy, Ash, who also has a whole bunch of questions, and John. How many Johns was that? I felt like that was like 3. Anyways, all of you guys, and I got an email from Ariel while we were waiting.
Yeah, it just came in today.
So we will have to hear from you guys. We'll have to answer you guys next time. All right. You get your questions answered. Email us. I'm so tired right now.
Yes. Tom is fading everyone.
I'm so fading. You can email us at tom@avrant.com, rob@avrant.com. Question at avrant.com. Go to the website, www.avrant.com, where you can leave us a question or a donation at our Buy Us a Cup of Coffee link. It's a PayPal donation, which we always appreciate. Facebook.com/avrant podcast. That's all one word. Twitter at First Reflect for Rob, at avrant_Tom for me, and at Austin Pond for Austin, our producer, who also has his own podcast called We Watch Movies. Actually, about insomnia. So it's a insomnia podcast.
That fits in because if you got insomnia, maybe you watch movies.
And that's right. That's true. Because that's what they do. That's what they did.
It's the most reasonable one you've come up with yet.
I know. For AV Rant, I'm Tom Mantry.
And I'm Rob H. Now go out and listen to something.
After party starting when the after party starts, which will hopefully be soon. I am very tired.